Most people scream when they are about to die, but this curse forces you to smile. Imagine standing on a center stage, blinded by spotlights, while an ancient, invisible parasite completely hijacks your mind. It turns every single face you trust into a wide-eyed, grinning nightmare. 20,000 screaming fans are in the arena, and they are about to watch your countdown hit zero. The nightmare begins exactly 6 days after the first movie ended. To understand what happens next, you only need to know one brutal rule. This curse is a mind parasite passed like a chain letter. To get rid of it, you must brutally take a life in front of a living witness. A desperate cop named Joel is currently carrying this death sentence, and his time is up. He tracks down 2 dangerous criminals at a remote hideout, planning to execute one in front of the other to pass the curse along. But a chaotic, panicked shootout breaks out, and Joel accidentally kills his intended witness. Suddenly, a petty drug dealer named Louis Frigoli steps out of the shadows, completely unaware he just walked into a horror movie. Louis stands there, frozen in absolute shock, witnessing the bloody aftermath. Seconds later, as Joel flees the house in a panic, he is completely flattened by an oncoming pickup truck. Louis is left entirely alone, deeply traumatized, and without realizing it, he has just become the new host of the Smile entity. But this curse isn't done climbing the social ladder just yet. Cut to New York City, where we meet our main character, Skye Riley. Skye is a global pop sensation staging a massive comeback after a horrific car crash a year earlier that killed her boyfriend, Paul Hudson, and left her with severe physical injuries and a history of substance abuse. She is under intense, round-the-clock pressure from her manager mother, Elizabeth, and her assistant, Joshua, to prove she is completely clean and ready for a grueling world tour. But during a late-night, exhausting dance rehearsal, Skye severely throws out her back. Terrified of admitting she is in pain and risking the tour, she decides to sneak out under the cover of night to buy illicit painkillers. And who does she call? Her old high school connection, Louis Frigoli. But when Skye slips into Louis's apartment, she doesn't find a normal drug dealer. She finds a man living in absolute, frantic terror. Louis is a manic wreck, trapped in a state of absolute, unraveling panic. He paces the messy room frantically, sweating profusely, and screaming at the empty corners of his apartment. In a state of pure hysteria, he claims that an invisible entity is hunting him, a shape-shifting monster that steals the faces of people he knows just to mock him. To Skye, this looks like a classic, severe case of a drug-induced psychotic break. Terrified, but desperate to get her painkillers, she tries to de-escalate the situation, speaking softly to calm him down. Suddenly, Louis stops dead in his tracks. His manic wheezing instantly cuts off, and the overwhelming terror vanishes from his eyes. It is replaced by a rigid, dead-eyed, and deeply unsettling ear-to-ear grin. Before a horrified Skye can even process this sudden shift, the physical nightmare of the curse truly begins. With that frozen, monstrous smile still plastered across his face, Louis picks up a massive, heavy iron gym weight plate. Moving with an unnatural, calm strength, he begins to violently and repeatedly smash the heavy metal directly into his own head. He continues the brutal self-mutilation until his skull fractures and he collapses dead onto the blood-soaked floor. Skye is left utterly paralyzed with horror, staring at the fresh corpse of her old acquaintance. As the initial shock fades, raw self-preservation takes over. Realizing that being found in a room full of blood and illegal drugs will instantly destroy her hard-won career comeback, she panics. Grabbing her things, she flees into the New York night without calling the police. But what she doesn't know is that by witnessing that horrific act, the parasite has already crawled deep into her mind. Over the next few days, Skye's high-profile reality begins to crack at the seams. It starts small with subtle psychological torments, whispering auditory hallucinations, the suffocating feeling of being watched, and deep shadows twisting across the walls of her luxury apartment. But the entity quickly turns up the volume, invading her professional life. During a high-stakes fan meet and greet, the glamour shatters, when a young girl stares up at her with that exact same dead-eyed, frozen grin. This chilling moment is immediately followed by a terrifying encounter with an obsessed fan who breaches security and violently grabs her. As the public chaos escalates, the lines between what is real and what is a hallucination begin to completely vanish. Skye tries to reach out to her estranged best friend, Gemma, desperately seeking a safe space, but the crushing weight of her isolation only grows. The psychological torment intensifies as the entity begins weaponizing Skye's deeply buried trauma against her. She starts seeing horrifying visions of her dead boyfriend, Paul, his pale figure staring at her from the pitch-black corners of her room. The phantom presence of the man she lost in the car crash pushes her to the absolute brink of a breakdown. But just when Skye thinks she has completely lost her mind and control over reality, a sharp vibration cuts through the terror. Her phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number, delivering a cold jolt of real-world adrenaline. The ominous message reads, "I know you were at Lewis's house. You are in extreme danger." Instantly, the nightmare shifts from a private mental breakdown into an active, life-or-death conspiracy, forcing her to realize there is no escape. The mysterious sender is Morris, a rogue nurse covertly tracking the curse, who sends her a deeply unsettling video clip recorded by Lewis just days before his death. In the footage, a frantic Lewis records himself explaining that something invisible and monstrous is actively hunting him, a haunting confirmation that proves Skye is not just losing her mind. The accompanying message reads, "I know you were at Lewis's house. You are in extreme danger." Driven by sheer desperation, Skye agrees to meet Morris in disguise at a secluded, dimly lit bar. He reveals a horrifying truth. This supernatural entity is an aggressive, psychological parasite that systematically isolates its host over several days, feeding on their deepest trauma before forcing a brutal public suicide to infect a new witness. To break the chain, Morris offers a radical, terrifying solution. He wants to use a hidden, clinical setup to intentionally stop Skye's heart for a few minutes, essentially killing her body to destroy the parasite before resuscitating her back to life. Terrified by this insane medical gamble, Skye panics and flees into the night. With her mind pushed to the absolute brink, she is forced straight back into her demanding pop star duties, attending a massive, glitzy charity gala hosted by her music executive, Darius. The room is filled with wealthy elites, but the moment Skye steps up to the microphone to deliver a high-profile speech, the teleprompter suddenly freezes. In that silent second, her fragile grip on reality completely shatters, and Skye launches into a raw, unhinged public tirade about how fake, suffocating, and monstrous her glamorous life has truly become. The audience gasps, but the nightmare escalates when she sees the specter of her dead boyfriend, Paul, dressed in a striking white suit, walking down the center aisle. Skye initially realizes the horrifying figure is just an illusion, but as a well-meaning woman on stage steps forward to comfort her, the hallucination violently flashes back. Believing Paul in his white suit has suddenly reappeared to attack her, Skye reacts in a screaming panic and violently shoves the figure off the stage. A sharp gasp echoes through the room as Skye snaps back to reality, realizing in absolute horror that she has just severely injured a helpless elderly donor in front of a stunned, silent crowd. Following the public disaster at the gala, the walls rapidly close in on Skye. Her overbearing mother forcefully intervenes, effectively placing her under medical lockdown, while callously insisting that the multi-million-dollar tour must still go on. As Skye completely breaks down under the suffocating pressure, the predatory entity decides it is finally time to force her to confront her deepest, darkest secret. Through a vivid, crushing flashback, the veil of her repressed memory is violently ripped away to reveal what really happened the night of the fatal car crash. Skye wasn't just a passive passenger or a tragic victim. During a toxic, explosive, and drug-fueled argument with Paul, a manic Skye intentionally grabbed the steering wheel and violently jerked it, deliberately causing the horrific, high-speed wreckage. She carries the crushing, suffocating guilt of murder in her heart, and this immense, hidden trauma is exactly the weapon the Smile entity has been waiting to weaponize. It uses these buried sins to completely shatter her remaining sanity and break her spirit from the inside out. Skye snaps out of the agonizing memory and opens her eyes to find herself waking up, trapped in a cold, sterile hospital room, hooked up to an intravenous fluid drip. Her mother, Elizabeth, is standing directly over her medical bedside. They immediately plunge into a tense, emotionally charged argument about the future of the tour, but mid-sentence, the atmosphere turns ice cold as Elizabeth's face twists into that familiar, rigid, and demonic grin. Moving with an unsettling, robotic speed, Elizabeth steps backward, punches her bare hand right through a large glass mirror on the hospital wall, and snatches up a jagged, razor-sharp shard to violently stab herself over and over again. Skye screams in absolute horror, tearing past her intravenous line as she lunges forward desperately to stop the self-mutilation. But her mother drops dead in a massive pool of blood. Gasping for air, a panicked Skye runs for the exit. But as she catches a fleeting glimpse of her reflection in the remaining cracked glass, the ultimate, mind-bending trap is revealed. There was no hallucination of her mother committing suicide. Skye's own hands are completely drenched in fresh blood, and she is holding the weapon. The entity played the ultimate trick. She was the one who just slaughtered her own mother. Driven into a state of pure adrenaline-fueled survival, Skye breaks out of the medical lockdown by frantically snatching a gun from a security guard and fleeing the facility. As she carjacks her own private driver and speeds away into the dark, her fractured mind seeks a lifeline, causing her to hallucinate that her estranged best friend, Gemma, has suddenly joined her inside the vehicle to help her escape. But the illusion shatters mid-flight when Skye's phone suddenly rings. She looks down at the screen to see Gemma's name flashing, and as she answers, the real Gemma's voice comes through the speaker, revealing that they haven't spoken in days. Skye turns in absolute horror to the passenger seat, only to see the imaginary version of Gemma slowly tilt her head, her eyes going dead as her face twists into a cold, mocking, and deeply demonic smile. The parasitic entity had been hallucinating her friend's presence from the very moment she escaped the hospital, manipulating her movements to guide her exactly where it wanted her to go. An abandoned, desolate Pizza Hut warehouse. Terrified and entirely alone, Skye arrives at the decaying structure where Morris has painstakingly constructed a makeshift clinical station inside a massive, rusted, walk-in freezer. He urgently explains that the extreme sub-zero temperatures are absolutely vital to freeze her body and protect her brain from permanent damage, while her heart is medically stopped to kill the parasite. However, before the procedure can begin, the trap fully snaps shut. The heavy iron freezer door suddenly slams locked, trapping Skye inside the icy chamber as Morris is cut off. Out of the swirling, frozen fog steps the physical manifestation of the Smile entity, taking the grotesque, mangled form of Skye's own past self from the night of the horrific car accident. A brutal, desperate physical struggle for survival erupts in the dark against the psychological monster, until a bruised Skye manages to grab the loaded syringe. Screaming in defiance against her fate, she drives the needle deep into her own neck, plunging the lethal chemical down to stop her own heart and kill the parasite once and for all. As she collapses onto the icy floor and darkness closes in, she truly believes she has won. But the nightmare is far from over. Skye suddenly gasps for air, her eyes snapping open in a violent shock of consciousness. But she isn't lying on the icy floor of a freezing, abandoned warehouse. Instead, she is standing perfectly upright, draped in a glittering, glamorous pop star costume and bathed in blinding, iridescent purple spotlights. The deafening, stadium-shaking roar of 20,000 screaming fans hits her like a physical tidal wave. Confused and disoriented, she looks out into the front row of the massive Madison Square Garden arena and freezes. Standing there, cheering wildly, is her mother, Elizabeth, completely alive, waving alongside her music executive, Darius, and her loyal assistant, Joshua. In a sickening wave of realization, the ultimate psychological horror sets in. The entire hospital escape, the murder of her mother, the frantic drive with the imaginary Gemma, the freezer, and Morris's desperate medical plan were all a massive, seamless, multi-day hallucination generated by the entity, while she sat catatonic. She never had a choice, she never had control, and she never left the stage. Right there in the spotlight, the air turns ice cold as the trap definitively closes. Before Skye can even scream, a massive, towering figure materializes from the shadows directly in front of her. It is the true, unfiltered form of the Smile entity, a giant, skinless, multi-limbed humanoid monstrosity with dozens of nesting, malformed jaws tearing out of an enormous, weeping mouth. While the adoring crowd remains completely oblivious, Skye watches in pure, unadulterated terror as the beast lunges forward, violently forcing its grotesque jaws down her throat to claim physical possession of her body. On the giant arena screens, Skye's frantic, tear-streaked expression suddenly goes completely blank. Her head tilts upward, and a wide, unnatural, and demonic grin slowly spreads across her face. In front of 20,000 horrified fans, a possessed Skye lifts her heavy, solid steel performance microphone. With that rigid, unblinking smile plastered to her face, she violently drives the sharp end of the microphone straight into her own eye and skull, collapsing dead on the stage. The film pulls back to a massive, sweeping shot of the chaotic arena as thousands of fans begin to scream in absolute terror, freshly infected by the horrific spectacle.